What's going on, FA Nation? It is Friday, and I'm your host, Jen Piacenti, joined by Ryan Hallam, and we are here to preview the conference championship weekend. Ryan, how's it going?
Going good. We're down to 2 games. Both look to be really, really good. Both close spreads. Both really could go either way. So it's exciting, not only for DFS purposes, but for just football fans.
Absolutely. We were debating this on a podcast I was talking on earlier. Do you consider Super Bowl Sunday more like dessert or the main course?
Main course.
Main course. All right.
Yeah. I mean, this is nice. And of course, even last week with 2 doubleheaders, but I mean, I was going to say the Pro Bowl is dessert, but I couldn't even bring myself to say it. Not that there is one, but this is what the Super Bowl is what we all go for. You win on, if you're a fan of a team like your Cowboys, if they win the NFC Championship and then lose the Super Bowl, how do you feel? I could tell you how I felt last year when my team lost the Super Bowl. Really, that shellacking we put on the Packers in the NFC Championship game really lost its luster when you lose the Super Bowl. So, if you're not a fan of any team, I could see this kind of being the big thing. But the Super Bowl is an event in itself, and to me, it's the big show.
And we do still have a lot of fans out there of teams that are remaining in these championship games. Let's start off with the Tampa Bay Green Bay game. Last I checked, the spread had actually temporarily moved to 2.5. So obviously a lot of action coming in on the Bills side with that 3-point spread. Over the course of the year, the Chiefs have actually had trouble covering the spread. We know that Patrick Mahomes now is going to play. It is official. He is going to play, but the questions remain about how his toe is going to be, how he's going to be with the concussion. If it's you, Ryan, who are you taking in this game with a 2.5-point spread favoring the Chiefs?
I am circling the wagons and breaking all the tables with the Bills fan. I'm part of Bills Mafia the rest of the way. Not only do I not like the rest of the teams left, but I've really enjoyed watching the Bills this year. Josh Allen has been awesome from start to finish. Him and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs has a 3-foot chip still on his shoulder as he came into this year. He's just been, it's probably the second best receiver in football after Devonte Adams, and I think he still wants to go out and prove it with a Super Bowl. I think the Bills are going to win. I think they're obviously going to cover if they're underdogs, but I just think. Kansas City, like you said, they haven't been blowing teams out. They haven't been putting up these astronomical offensive numbers that they did last year, or even in the beginning of this year. It just seems like they've kind of been on cruise control all season long. And I don't know that you can just turn it on like that. I think the toe injury is a bigger concern than the concussion.
Me too.
Honestly,
Me too.
He wasn't moving around well before the concussion.
Right.
So he's clearly not over that. And who even knows? I said this last night. I do the Family Times with our producer Matt Sells and Justin Fensterman. I would be surprised if the NFL just changed all the concussion rules for this week. There was no way Patrick Mahomes was not going to be in this game.
Right.
So you don't even know what kind of shape he's in. He's a great quarterback, but I feel like he's compromised coming into this week, and I think the Bills are just riding the wave right now.
And certainly both pass defenses are not great. So there could be a lot of points in this game. I believe last I checked it was 53.5. Are you liking the over or the under for this one?
I'm liking the over, not by a lot. I think I picked it 34-28 Bills in the game previews on Fantasy Alarm. Like you said, both defenses aren't great. Neither running game is all that great. I think, this is going to come in the air. Devin Singletary is just nothing, really. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is obviously beat up. We saw Darrell Williams last week. Le'Veon Bell, whether he plays or not, is not a factor. So I think we're going to see a lot of passing, a lot of excitement. They both have good wide receivers, and obviously the Chiefs have Travis Kelce. So I think we're going to see a lot of fireworks, but ultimately I think we're going to see a little more out of Buffalo.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the individual players in this game, because at this point, we know you guys are thinking about building your DFS lineups, maybe making some wagers on player props. By the way, congratulations to those of you in Michigan with now legalized sports betting. Woo woo, here we go. Let's start the train. All right, so let's start off with the quarterback position. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, both superstars. To me, I prefer Aaron Rodgers in this game. He's just been unstoppable over the course of the season. He had 48 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Brady had 40 to 12. Now, of course, Brady has been getting better and better. And there was a game where the Bucs actually beat Green Bay earlier in the season, but they had a compromised Devonte Adams at that point. I really don't think you can compare it. I think Rodgers is on an MVP campaign. I'm feeling Rodgers more than I'm feeling Brady, but I also think what worries me the most is that Tom Brady is the luckiest of all time. And seeing as how the Super Bowl will be played in Tampa, it just seems like so Tom Brady that he will win and get to have home field advantage in the Super Bowl. But still picking Green Bay here.
I'm picking Green Bay as well. Antonio Brown is now out. Mike Evans is still not that far away from that wonky, hyperextended knee. He only had 1 catch last week and 3 targets, so he's not 100%. Ronald Jones is going to played well last week, but he's not 100%. I just think there's a lot of injuries on the offensive side for the Bucs, and then their pass defense just really isn't that great. They have some good corners, and Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, but I mean they've been beatable in the second half of the season. I don't know how you stop Devonte Adams. They just haven't been able to all year long. I know Tampa Bay made Aaron Rodgers look awful in Week 6. I mean, he looked like he just wanted to be done by halftime. If he could have not come out for the half, I think he would have been okay. But that was October, the middle of October. I really don't feel like that's relevant right now. What happened in Week 6 isn't really relevant for championship weekend. I agree with you 100%. Rodgers and the Packers, the offense has just been just mind-blowing all season long. And I just don't see the Bucs being able to stop them just quite enough.
It's kind of amazing because on the surface, you look at it and you're like, God, Tom Brady has so many more weapons, but it just hasn't played out that way. Green Bay has put up the most offensive points per game all season. And last week they annihilated the Rams, which had been the team that had allowed the least points per game all season. So I feel like Green Bay is going to have no trouble putting up points on Tampa Bay. But let's move a little bit to the run game. You mentioned neither team has a particularly impressive run game, but Green Bay is the team you can run more on. Tampa Bay's run defense has been pretty decent. So I'm looking for my DFS lineups at both Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. I'm leaning towards Ronald Jones. Now, I understand that Leonard Fournette has been hot as of late, but the price is better on Ronald Jones. And over the course of the regular season, when Ronald Jones has been healthy, he has been the one that Arians has gone to. He had about 1,000 yards during the course of the season, 7 touchdowns. Fournette, not even 400 yards. Now, Fournette, of course, more involved in the passing game than Jones, perhaps. But price on Jones, cheaper on the DFS sites, and the odds are better if you want to take an anytime touchdown. I think it's 220 for Ronald Jones and like 130 for Leonard Fournette, something like that over on FanDuel last I checked. Who do you prefer in this game, and how much do you think it will proceed on the ground based on Green Bay's run defense, who, by the way, has allowed an average of exactly 1 touchdown per game played this year, including one last week to Cam Akers?
Yeah, definitely. I think Tampa Bay is going to want to control the ball. Like we already talked about the injuries to their wide receivers and the Packers' ability to score quickly. So I think I don't know that this game is going to rest as much on Brady's arms as some other games might have. But I do. For all the reasons you said, I completely favor Ronald Jones here. I know Fournette had the better game last week. He only had 4 more carries. I think he's 17 to Jones's 13, and we didn't even know if Jones was going to play. So the fact that Jones got that much work last week and another week to sit, I think he's going to take even maybe a 75-25 carry split over Fournette. I think it's going to be weighted pretty heavily in Jones's favor. Like you said, once Jones kind of claimed the job, whenever he was healthy, it was his. Every time we thought Fournette was kind of making some inroads, the next time Ronald Jones had 23 carries and Fournette had 3. And that's just the way. And Arians has come out time after time. And I know we talk about coach speak all the time, but it has come out in actions too. He's come out and Ronald Jones is my guy. Ronald Jones is our guy. All season long he's been saying that. So I see no reason. Obviously, Jones is not 100%. So maybe 70-30, but I feel like it's certainly going to be in his favor. Like you said, Fournette will get some catches, 3-4 probably during the game. Maybe he breaks off one, and scores. But my confidence is way more in Ronald Jones. And if his salary is lower on top of it, that just makes it even more enticing for me.
I feel like the value is what it's about. Let's talk about the other side. Darrell Williams, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire run for a season high 161 yards on the Bills in week 6. And he's less expensive than, he is, yes. 6,000 on FanDuel. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 62. So Darrell Williams is 6,000. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 62. Would you be willing to trust that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to repeat after he's been kind of injured, or do you think they're going to lean more on Darrell Williams, who could end up getting the same kind of production? I don't know that it was special to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think you can just run on the Bills.
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, outside of that game in week 1, did we ever really think Clyde Edwards-Helaire was special this year? Not really.
Didn't get the touchdowns.
Yeah, he's kind of average, most of the year. He had, like you said, 2, maybe 3 really good games, and the rest was just okay. I mean, they didn't bring in – I know they didn't use him a lot, but they brought in Le'Veon Bell, which, kind of screamed there wasn't a ton of confidence in the kid. He hasn't played since week 15. He's practicing limited now. I think it's going to be, at best, 50-50 split for him. I think that they certainly are going to trust. I think Andy Reid is going to have more trust in a veteran running back, especially one who carried the ball pretty decently last week, over a rookie that he hasn't really leaned on when they traded back into the first round to get him. So, I mean, I wouldn't call it a bust season for Edwards-Helaire, but it certainly isn't one where you go into next year, first round pick. I think we're certainly going to pump the brakes a little bit on him heading into the second season. So, Williams to me is probably the better play, probably the more reliable guy. Could Edwards-Helaire come out and do something special? Sure, he could. But I don't think any of the signs are pointing to him just popping off this week for a big game.
And again, as I said, Darrell Williams is $200 less expensive on FanDuel right now. So a little more value there as well. Let's talk about the receivers. So we now know Antonio Brown is definitely out. So I have a couple questions. Obviously, I think, we all know Jair Alexander is elite. Okay. Mm-hmm. The guy allowed, let me see, I have the numbers somewhere. It's something ridiculous. Only 319 receiving yards and 16 conversions in his coverage all season. He is shut down the number 1 ranked Pro Football Focus cornerback this season. Now, obviously, anyone can have an off day, but it's expected he will be on Mike Evans. So I'm not expecting a big game out of Mike Evans. However, they're a little more vulnerable in the slot. Now that we know that Antonio Brown is out, that gives me a lot of reason to like Chris Godwin. Now, my question to you is, I'm looking for value. I'm kind of thinking about Cameron Brate might get some more receptions. Gronk is blocking, maybe little yards go there. Do you like someone like Scotty Miller? Or do you think maybe Tyler Johnson's going to back right up into Antonio's spot? Do you think they're going to move Godwin over? What do you think's going on here with these receivers? What do you like?
I like Godwin, like you said. I think, the Packers have good corners on the outside, and Alexander and Kevin King, and Chandon Sullivan's not great out of the slot. And Godwin, he's battled through a lot of injuries, but he had touchdowns in 4 straight before last week. And he's been pretty deep. He had 5 catches in 10 out of the 14 games. He only had 3 games with over 90 yards. He hasn't been racking up yards totals, but he's been, a big part of the game. 6 targets in 12 out of the 14 games this season. So, him and Brady certainly have formed a connection. So he's the receiver I like the best. Secondarily, I like Scotty Miller. He's only had 1 catch in, I think, the last 3 or 4 games. But let's remember, before Antonio Brown came to town, he was at least a fantasy factor here and there. He was on some rosters. People were picking him up. They had 4 games of over 70 receiving yards and three with 5 or more catches. So he was a part of this offense before they brought in Brown. With Brown definitely out, I think he has a chance of coming in and making an impact. He's a slippery guy. He's good at finding holes in the defense. And then he's shifty once he gets the ball in his hands. I guess that's what we say about white receivers. Shifty. If I'm allowed to say that.
Shifty. It's a compliment of the day. He's a shifty little guy.
I'm not sure you would like that, but.
All right, I like it. So let's go over to the other side then. Obviously, Devonte Adams is a must play. There's no reason to ever not start Devonte Adams. MVS to me, kind of a big home run threat. big play or nothing is how I feel about MVS. So to me, he's only a GPP play. How do you feel about Alan Lazard? Seems to be getting healthier after the core surgery. But again, the numbers from last week kind of have to do with one big play at the end. Are you liking either of those better, or are you thinking maybe it's a Robert Tonyan day?
I mean, I definitely think Tonyan is going to be a factor. The Tampa Bay was not good against the tight end either. They gave up 11.2 fantasy points per game, which was 23rd in football. He really slipped down the stretch. 3 straight games with under 20 yards before last week's 4 for 60. So he bounced back. But he's kind of like the Mike Evans of tight ends. He's just a touchdown machine. Doesn't necessarily, he's not going to light up the receptions or the yards. But I think he had 13 touchdowns. Or 11 touchdowns. You can't really, go wrong with that. And let's look at the tight ends in this slate. All right, we have Travis Kelce, and then you have, you just talked about Gronk and Brait, and then you have Dawson Knox, really bad. So Tonyan really falls in the number 2 tight end spot for me in this one, even if he might not be a guy who often lights up the scoreboard, but with his touchdown capabilities and Tampa Bay's against the tight end, he's certainly the second best if you don't want to pay the price for Kelce.
All right, guys. So that's a big breakdown of the basic players you need to know for that game. We already touched on Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen, but we'll touch on it again. I agree. Mahomes, obviously elite, but could be a little hobbled. I'm leaning more towards Josh Allen here. I am also rooting for the Bills. I don't know why. I just am. It's probably wrong, but I'm doing it anyway. PD Stitch, shout out. I'm rooting for Bills Mafia this weekend. I like Josh Allen, like what he's done. I like what he can do with his legs. Certainly you can beat Kansas City on the ground. I think he could be active there. One thing that I found really interesting, I know you said Devin Singletary stinks, and he does, but there is a player prop on FanDuel right now for Devin Singletary over 41.5 rushing yards. I'm actually taking the over on that. Now, I know he only had 25 yards last week, but here's what I'm thinking. You look at Kansas City, very attackable on the ground. If you watch that game last week, the Bills game versus Baltimore, they didn't run the ball at all first half. And guess what? It wasn't working. And it kind of seemed like whichever team was going to come out with a game plan after the half and actually mix it up, try to do some running and some throwing, was going to have the advantage. And after the half, they came out, they started just at least trying to run the ball a little bit against a much tougher run defense.
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like Devin Singletary, not big numbers. I'm not saying big numbers. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I kind of like the player prop of 41.5. I think the Bills are going to have to do that in order to stay competitive versus Kansas City. They need to put it in their game plan. They need to have something to confuse Bruce Arians. So I'm liking that, but obviously no big run game there. On the other side, we talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams already, so I guess we don't need to repeat that.
I mean, 41.5 is possible. That's not a high number. It's not going to be on a player prop side. Yeah, that's something that you can look at. I'm still not wholly confident in over 41.5, but it's definitely doable. I mean, he breaks one run for 15 yards, then you only need 25 for the rest of the game. So it's definitely possible. They just, like you said, they just don't run a lot. They don't run a lot in the red zone. But it is a decent matchup for them to be able to run. It's funny that 41 is kind of a number that we're kind of unsure about because it's really low.
Because it seems like it should be easy. There's no Zach Moss. Come on. They got to go somewhere. I mean, last week they gave up 96 yards, I think. So let's say 50 of those go to Josh Allen. It still leaves 46 yards for Devin.
It's very possible.
Right?
TJ Yeldon is not going to be really a factor. So it's possible.
Maybe.
It's possible.
We're just trying to find ways to keep you guys playing and having some fun here. All right, wide receivers, both Kansas City and Buffalo. We could have a lot of points in this game. Obviously, Stephon Diggs must start. We already said that. Looks like Gabe Davis isn't playing, correct? Right. So that to me,
haven't ruled him out yet, but I'd be surprised at this point.
That to me bumps up John Brown a bit. Yeah. And then Cole Beasley looks like a go.
Yes, taken off the injury report, he's a full go.
Who do you like of those guys?
This one's really hard. I don't know. Like, I feel like I've tried to guess between those two guys, and not that, Brown's been on and off the field a lot. So this one's tough. After the Colts game where the Brown had no catches, we're like, oh, that maybe he's not a thing. And then last week he came back with 8. So now it's like, what the hell do you do with John Brown? I mean, I like Beasley. Brown is not a sexy name at all. He hasn't scored very many touchdowns this year. He got off to a good start, and then the injury really crushed pretty much the rest of his season. He's nice. He's reliable, but he's not a big, fantasy scorer. And Beasley not necessarily isn't either. But we've seen Beasley have games with 6 catches, 110 yards, 8 catches, 130 yards. He scores here and there.
Yeah, the thing to me is Cole Beasley 4 touchdowns all season. He just doesn't get the red zone targets. But that being said, on DraftKings, he's a better play because you get it's a PPR scoring essentially, and he gets the catches. He can get the yards. He feels like a safety valve for Josh Allen. John Brown more likely to have maybe just like a randomly big day, but a little riskier. That's kind of how I see it. And it's hard to pick. I would love to pick Gabe Davis here. That's who I want to pick.
I agree.
And unfortunately, I have him going in our playoff league, Gabe Davis. I decided not to. I don't think I'm going to make any moves until Super Bowl week. I got 2 moves left. Anyway, that's strategy. We can talk about that later. But I'm rolling until Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm having trouble as well. Maybe I think I might do the John Brown play. I think he and Cole Beasley are priced about the same, but maybe John Brown on FanDuel, maybe Cole Beasley on DraftKings.
So say you're doing like the both game slate. Do you feel like more of an Allen Lazard or more like a John Brown?
I feel more like a John Brown.
Okay.
I do. I just feel uncomfortable picking another receiver in Green Bay. I don't know. I mean, it's probably the same. So, and speaking of receivers, Kansas City has a few.
They do.
Obviously, Tyreek Hill is a must play. And obviously, Travis Kelce is a must play because let's face it, he is essentially their number 2 wide receiver. Which of the other guys do you like? Can you get behind Mecole Hardman? Can you get behind Demarcus Robinson?
I struggle to get behind either one of them. I'm definitely not Demarcus Robinson. I mean, he's had a couple decent games during the season. But if you're going to go, I think, with either one, I think it's going to be Hardman. I feel like he's been running more routes. He's the big play guy. He's more apt to take the get behind the defense and score 60-yard touchdown or take the 10-yard pass and take it to the house. He's just way more exciting than Robinson. Robinson, we've seen him drop a lot of passes right in his damn hands this year too, including at least 2 that I can think of off the top of my head in the end zone. Hardman has been kind of boomer bust. He did it the 4 for 58 last week, so at least that's a modicum of consistency. Not much, but a little bit. So, I mean, if we're going to go off of, recency, I'm going to go with Hardman too. So I like John Brown more. I like Allen Lazard more. But if you're trying to maybe hit that home run, right, the 2 catch for 80 yards and a touchdown kind of guy, then maybe Hardman's your guy. Like you said, I don't know that either Kansas City or the Bills are going to run a ton. So I think we'll see a lot of passing in that one. So yeah, he could break off something.
Definitely. I mean, I definitely think Mecole Hardman is a huge, big play threat. The problem is I feel like he's more of a handcuff to Tyreek Hill, whereas Demarcus Robinson is more of a handcuff to Sammy Watkins, and Sammy Watkins is out. But then again, it hasn't really played out that way because who can predict playoff football? It's insane. And I would be remiss not to talk about the highest price running back on the slate this week, and that is Aaron Jones. I went off on a tangent just thinking about teams you can beat, and I totally forgot to talk about Aaron Jones versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, obviously a very stout run defense, and obviously number 1 Aaron in Green Bay is Aaron Rodgers. But again, this is playoff football, and Aaron Jones is probably the most talented running back left. But how much faith do you have in Aaron Jones? A, that they give him the opportunities, and B, that he's going to be able to run versus Tampa Bay. And how much does Jamal Williams factor in?
I don't like how much Jamal Williams has been factored in lately, but Aaron Jones still seems to find a way to produce most of the time. The problem is going to be the matchup against Tampa Bay. He had only 15 yards on 10 carries against them the first time. I know I said it doesn't matter what happened in October. But that kind of does matter a little bit what happened in October, because the Tampa Bay was just a great run defense all season long. So it's not like, now they've gotten worse. But I think Williams is going to be very involved. I won't be surprised if he gets 8 to 10 carries. Jones might not top 15, but he'll also be involved in the pass game. He'll probably have 4 or 5 targets, which he's often been targeted down in the red zone there as well, if they're not at Tunyon or Adams. So I still have a decent amount of faith in Jones, Aaron Jones. We talked about Ronald Jones also.
I know there's 2 Jones running backs, but do you have enough faith in him to spend, say, $9,000 on FanDuel and put him in your lineup? I mean, it's so tricky because you want to start your best players. That's what you should do in the playoffs. But it just seems to me like this one, the price tag is just, it's a lot.
Honestly, I don't have DraftKings up in front of me, so maybe you can tell me if I had to pay an astronomical price for someone.
Yeah,
it's going to be Travis Kelce over Aaron Jones, because I feel like Travis Kelce is a no-brainer in this one. The Bills were just god-awful against the tight end all season long. I know Mark Andrews didn't have a big game last week, but that's like the one time the Bills didn't go a ridiculous amount of production to a tight end. So to me, if you're going to pay an overly high price for someone in this slate, it's going to be Travis Kelce for me.
So on DraftKings, these are the prices of the running backs. You got Aaron Jones at $6,500. You've got Leonard Fournette at $53,000, so quite a bit of savings there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire at $5,000, and Ronald Jones at $4,600. Devin Singletary's $4,500. Of those 2, I would definitely have Ronald Jones.
Steal at that price.
So yeah, I believe that Travis Kelce is one of the highest priced players out there. Let me just look on DraftKings. Travis Kelce is $8,000.
Worth every penny. If he doesn't have 10 catches and 100 yards, I'm going to be shocked. That's how much confidence I have in him.
I thought you were going to say, I'm going to be shot. And I was like, wow, that's
God, please, no.
Tough.
I was going to come up with something a little more elaborate, but God, given my pie bet resume, I don't really want to be putting any more bets down.
You didn't want to cause an insurrection. So,
no.
All right. It's already flown. Time has flown. That is the end of the preview live stream. You guys have so much fun this weekend. We will be around. We'll be in chat 24/7, always at Fantasy Alarm. Ryan Hallam and I are just probably overly involved on Twitter. So if you have any questions about what to do with your DFS lineups or your playoff teams, please go ahead and ask us. We're available. Ryan, what have you got going on this weekend?
I'm just going to be watching the game, but I just want to say what a pleasure it was to share the stage with the FSGA nominee for Best Short Form Video Series. Congratulations to you for being nominated, and to all of the other parts of the family, Bender and Ronis, Bender and Bowden,
Strong, Andrew Cooper, Mike Alexander.
We have a hell of a team. I'm so happy to see some of our colleagues be recognized, and hopefully you guys all take home the awards and do damn good work.
And I don't want to ruin it for all you guys out there, but we actually all like each other too.
That too.
I know, it's unbelievable. Thank you very much, Ryan. It's a pleasure to work with you always. We always have so much fun when we do these live streams. We don't do them often enough. So hopefully we will get an encore soon. And for the rest of you guys out there, have a great weekend and enjoy the football. We'll catch you next time.